Hi, everybody. Folks, you are watching and listening to a special edition of Open Bar. I'm Mike Morales here in soggy Southern California. That gentleman out there is.
Jim Riley, and I'm in God's country, Montana, Mike.
God's, I envy you because it's one of the states I've always wanted to go to is Montana and Wyoming, actually. Never got a chance. I've been to Colorado. I've flown in and out of the Four Corners area, obviously Arizona and once or twice in Utah, just as a layover. And uh, Jim Riley, ladies and gentlemen, has a long history. Probably I think you and I are contemporaries because we have both seen this business rise and fall, rise and fall, rise and fall,
Yeah.
and you in particular because when I met you, you were involved with Azuñia Tequila. You were the guy, as I recall, this was a few years back. You were importing Azuñia Tequila and Regional,
Yes, sir.
which I love. That tequila, just some of you tequila nuts out there, some of you guys who are watching us, some of the old dogs are going Regional, and they still like hoard bottles of that
Oh my
stuff.
gosh. Yeah.
And Azuñia for me was Regional Light. And so I know we got an hour, so bring us from that point where you grew the brand of Azuñia, and then what happened to it?
Yeah. No problem, Mike. And what a great memory you have, because a lot of people don't remember that I bought Ray Hanel up here.
Oh
So
yeah.
good job. And so my journey in tequila as a tequila brand owner started in mid 2006, but I was running Sierra Tahoe Ski Resort in the late 90s, early 2000s. And this is the cool part. When the sales reps from Cabo Wabo came in, I was a food and beverage director and I had a TV show up there. Food and beverage director, we see all the brands come in. And so the team from Cabo Wabo came in, they were selling us on Cabo Wabo. I'm like, this is incredible. I love this bottle. I love the story. I love Sammy
No, we're
Hagar. Like,
talking about the old bottle, right? The
oh,
old blue bottle, the old glass when
dude,
Sammy still owned it, right?
this was the original one.
Right.
You know what I mean? The original one. And I fell in love with it. And they're like, hey, by the way, the tequila industry is going to be taken off. There's going to be all these other brands. And of course, the rest was history in the late 2000s. We're talking about 1998, 97, 98 ish,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I was up there for 3, 4 years and then came back to Southern California. That was in Lake Tahoe, and was ultimately the vice president of Kettle One Vodka and helped grow that brand on a national level.
That's
As,
right. I recall that. You had a vodka background. So that was
that's right.
okay. Okay.
Yep. So what that allowed me to do is learn so much about this industry, because before I was a buyer for the bar and the resort, and then I was a supplier. I skipped the whole distribution thing, went straight to supplier. And I was fortunate enough to work directly for Carl Nolette, the owner, and Bill Aldine, the president. I was technically their first marketing employee. They
Oh
had a
wow.
sales guy playing marketing guy, and he had an assistant in the office playing, I'll help you, right? So it was a great run. And I was there almost 10 years when they sold to Diageo, at least the US operations and distribution rights. And so I had an opportunity to go to Diageo and work for them. I was going to have to move to Florida or New York. I'm a California native. I said, there's no way I'm moving. But because of my position, I didn't have the exact insight of what was going on, but I knew something was going on.
Hmm.
And I'd been in a position to meet a lot of people. And as a hobby, which became kind of a second career, I raced off-road vehicles professionally in Mexico.
And that's what I
So
remember more about you. In fact, that your company's still called Baja United, correct?
that's right. So I raced the Baja 1000, all those other races in Mexico, and then the ones in Nevada and Arizona. And in that, and these stories twist so many times between then and now.
Yeah.
Within that, there was a drink company called Who's Your Daddy Energy Drink. Okay, now, and if you know the guys that started that, it was the youngest person to bring a company to be public, and his name
Right.
was Dan Fleshman. And now he's like this superstar celebrity business entrepreneur coach, running with all the big dogs. Well, he sponsored me with Who's Your Daddy Energy Drink in the race car. And one of the people in his financial deck that was at this meeting, me trying to, get some sponsorship dollars.
Right.
He pulls me aside afterwards. He says, "Hey, I see your business card says Kettle One Vice President." I said, "Yeah." He goes, "My family owns this distillery down in Mexico in the state of Jalisco, and they were producing this tequila and it sold and it's going to go away soon, and this distillery is going to be sitting there dormant with no work for the workers. Do you,
Ah,
he goes, what do you think? Do you want to start a brand?" I'm like, "Dude, this is the first time I'm hearing of this." But you see my book behind me. It says The Freedom to Say Yes.
yeah.
So I'm like, I'm a yes guy, right? So I'm like, you know what? Yes, I'll go meet your family. Literally popped on a plane a week later, flew to Guadalajara, and we went to the city of Amatitan, which I'm sure you know where that's at.
Yes. One of my
Um,
favorite, that
uh,
region, all the tequilas that come out of there, I jump on them right away. It's my favorite. I think it should have it, they lump it into the lowlands, and I really don't. I think it really deserves its own, um, well, it's no designation one way or the other of
I
highlands
agree
and
with you.
lowlands anyway, but it really is a very special region. I was just there last, I believe it was June or July. I was there for
Oh,
another
it
brand.
really is.
Beautiful.
It's a great place. The people are wonderful. So I flew down there and I met Sergio Zuniga Partida and his brother Enrique Partida,
Hmm.
and the father who has passed away long since. And they said, "Yeah, this is the distillery was Miravalle, and they were making tequila for the locals. That's how Sammy Hagar found them years before that."
Hmm.
They said this is the best tequila in the region, happened to be that distillery. So Sammy signed a deal with them. And of course, he sold to Campari, right? So the
Right.
story unfolds. Funny though, I was the guy buying Cabo, 12 years before that.
Yeah, yeah.
So here I am at this distillery, and they're like, "Yeah, they're working on moving out. They're building a distillery in the Highlands or whatever. And we got to find some work for these people." And I tried the tequila, Mike, and like you said, it was Rejanel Light.
Yes.
And so in the vodka business, we always tasted Kettle One vodka against Absolute and Grey Goose. If you were going to buy our product, you had to do our taste test, and that's what we did. And so, if I'm sure you've tasted through some vodkas. Well, you taste Absolute, and it's got that vodka bite,
Hmm.
which some people like.
Yeah.
You taste Grey Goose and it has that earthy tone, but yet a little bit perfumey. Beautiful bottle. And they were kicking butt.
Oh,
But,
yeah.
but then you
Well,
taste Kettle
Franklin
One.
Distillers, I mean, that guy was a genius anyway. He was the one that brought Jägermeister.
Jaeger. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So then in that taste test, when you taste Kettle One, it's like thick and rich and melt in your mouth, buttery. And you're like, well, of course I like this one the best, right?
Yeah.
And so that's how we went to market with Kettle One. When I tried the Blanco tequila that they were prepared to make for me for Azuñia Tequila,
Right.
it reminded me exactly of that taste test. It was that buttery smooth,
Yep.
go down easy, but yet still had the essence of the land and the distillation and the agave.
Right.
All those things were in it. And
Which
I
is
just
brilliant when you think about how they can manage to do that, because Regional was just bold and in your face and minerally, and then this one came in a little bit. We used to, some of the wording we use, the nomenclature, the language, the lingo. We say it's a little bit softer on
yeah.
the palate, and it was beautiful. It was just, but it was, everything was still there.
Well, I can tell you why, because it's public now. So it'll be fun to talk about it. But
Yeah.
so I just fell in love with it. And literally we were trying it in either styrofoam or plastic cups. So I mean, we didn't do it any justice in the taste test. But
Yeah.
you know what I said? I said, you know what? I like this a lot. I can do something with this. And so then I bounced back and forth for the next 6 months, learning, writing a business plan, coming up with names. I mean, there are so many roads to go down with the craziness. We got sued for our name before we even launched the brand from some marketing company in New Jersey saying that we stole their name. They didn't. They were trademark squatters. So that's why Azuñia is spelled Azunia, which isn't even phonetically correct in Spanish, the IA, because
Yeah.
it didn't have the I in it. But at the end of the day, it helped the gringos be able to say it the right way.
Well, yeah.
Azuñia,
Yeah, they
right?
can say it right. Yeah.
So we had a lot of ups and downs, but so we signed the deal with them. Now here's where the Reynel comes in. You're going to love this.
Okay.
So we knew what we were going to make. And we started to formulate the brand. I'd raised $5 million in private equity through some friends like Peter Jacobson, the pro golfer, Bill
Okay.
Walton, the NBA All-Star, and some of his
Right. Right.
buddies. So we were ready to go. Well, the distillery was still allowing Cabo Wabo to move out, so we couldn't do anything
Until
there
they
at
were gone, right?
until they were gone, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they didn't want to disrupt the order that they were finishing for them. So Sergio says, "Hey, I'm the president of the Hito right now, and we oversee Rejanel down the road, which of course is across the street from Herradura."
Right.
And that was before Brown Foreman bought him too. And he says, "Let's go over there. I'll show you what we got. Maybe you guys can lease this place. We can make the tequila for you, and we'll get it all figured out." Well, that's exactly what we did, Mike, is we leased that property. And what's really bitching is this is also public, but you'll appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay.
They had a whole bunch of añejo stored
Oh
because
no.
because they hadn't sold that much.
Yeah.
That brand, the Rejanel was owned by 36 Itos in that area,
Right.
and they were just selling amongst themselves. It had
That's what
made
I had heard, that it was a co-op.
it was a co-op. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so then they rotated presidents and stuff like that. And you show up on Fridays and the other partners would be there in the office waiting to collect, their pennies or whatever they made, right?
Right.
So they were excited that we were able to do something. So we were going to bottle the Azuñia there and then ship it out of there.
Hmm.
Well, they said we can launch Reposado Añejo right away because we have some of that stored. It just doesn't sell. So we wound up buying a whole bunch of these Añejo barrels and we bottled that. Now, if you're listening and you have an original Azuñia bottle, it's a frosted glass, gold writing. Do not.
Not the secondary label where you, because and I'll backtrack a little bit. You sent me a T-shirt when you first sent me those bottles for our sipping off the cuff, and you can see that on our YouTube channel. First original Azuñia, the labels were different, and the
Yeah.
T-shirt was a racing T-shirt with the logo across it, which was really cool. I still use it. I still have it.
Right on. So
Yeah,
no, this was really we only did I think
frosted bottles, really?
frosted añejo bottle. Only the
Not, I don't
añejo.
think I've ever seen one of them.
You probably haven't. Tommy's up in San Francisco. They bought a pallet.
Oh,
Of
okay.
course he did, right?
Yeah.
So he's, in my opinion, he's sitting on gold. And here's why. I had a tequila aficionado track me down like a year into it. And he
Right.
says, "Hey, do you have the batch numbers from this?" Yeah, of course we do. We have to, right? So we track down the barrels. He says, "Check this out." He goes, "Look what I got. I have the batch numbers from Partida Elegante, right?
Oh,
$500 bottle, right?
yeah, yeah.
Same batches."
Oh, no way.
And we're talking about
Wow.
2007, and they'd already been in the barrels for a year or two, right?
Yeah.
And it's all the same family, but David Partita went in business with Shansby, who owned Partita Tequila at the time.
Right, right.
So, and I don't know how it all transpired. All I know is I bought some barrels that had been sitting there so I can go to market. Well, these tequila geeks like yourself, you guys know all the little details.
Well,
And,
yeah,
and
I don't go that far, but to just see, because I love the stories behind it,
yeah.
that they're actually, and we had heard that we were talking about Gary Shansby. That's a whole
Oh
other
yeah, we don't even want
animal.
to go down that road.
Yeah, yeah, no,
Um, so anyways, the añejo in that original bottle is exactly this aged añejo from apparently the same batch because all the numbers matched up. So that was pretty cool. So here's the deal. The Azuñia Blanco that you love so much.
yes,
We started talking about that towards my last few years with the brand. We aerated it, or they aerated it.
right, right.
And that's where it gave it that softness. So it
Well, it was one of
maintained.
the first ones to actually do stuff like that.
Yeah, and so what it was is that the master distiller at the time, he goes, "Look, I play around with these types of, formulas and stuff, and nobody really cared or listens to me, but here's what I made for you guys." And I try them like I absolutely loved it because coming from the vodka business, I wanted to be able to sip it without, that heavy bite like what I was suggesting in Absolute, but I
Right.
didn't want to lose the flavor. And the aeration does that. You keep all that agave flavor. And when you open that bottle of Azuñia Blanco, you can smell that agave. It pops. but like you said, it's really
Yep.
soft.
Yep.
So that's how that was accomplished. And we had that relationship over on that Reynel property for, I think it was like 6 months to a year. And then we wound up tanking over batches to Miravalle because we had bought in so much, and then eventually we were just producing it over there. So still clay Hornos ovens, still the same agaves because it's from the family in between the two properties, et cetera. But we wound up doing a deal with them. We leased that distillery for our rights, and then we leased up to like 5,000 acres of agave plants because we were really well funded. Now we never used that. Okay. I mean, that was
Yeah.
a lot of agave, and the
Yeah.
family made way more money selling agave on the open market
Oh,
during
sure.
high times, but we had access to it. And that's how we came out to market with the confidence that we had to really sell whatever we could sell, and I'll tell you, man, we're all arrogant when we launch these brands. We got the
Well,
best.
yeah.
We're going to sell it all,
Well,
and
it's you have to. You've got this dream. I mean, you spend what, 2 years, 2 to 5 years to wrap things up and just bring it to the border, and then your job really starts.
yeah. Yeah.
And luckily you had a lot of experience, with the vodka, but vodka sells easier than tequila,
Oh
right?
my gosh. You know what? And look, if I write some columns for you guys, we're going to talk about the business of being in this business because
Yes, please.
it,
I'd love to know that, more of it. We were talking on camera, Jim and I, about maybe Jim writing a few guest articles for us about the inside stories of backgrounds that nobody understands, the business of the tequila business. And then you've been around for a while. We've seen this business change
oh
completely,
yeah.
distribution and everything, so I can't wait to hear your point of views when that comes around. So
Yeah, I got a few. And the thing is, Mike, is I love entrepreneurs. I love people trying to start a brand and do their thing, but it hurts me to see people wasting money and
oh
time
yeah.
and energy. So I'm
Yes.
very passionate about taking, I call it, I've paid the dummy tax so they don't so
Yep.
they don't have to, right? So if I can coach and consult them, I've literally saved people hundreds of
And
thousands of
and that's
dollars in the
and that's what
process.
you do, right? I mean, I know. Why don't you wrap up the story about Azuñia? I guess eventually you sold to a company out of Portland. They were looking for. uh, I can tell you some of the backstory on that. I was actually contacted because I do a little bit of consulting on the side, not a lot,
Yeah.
probably not as much as you do. I just don't have the time because of Tequila Aficionado. So I have a small handful of off and on clients. And
Yeah.
I was contacted by a gentleman who was seeking a brand that was for sale. And did I know any? And he reached out to me on LinkedIn, and I had no idea that Azuñia was in the market, and then
Yeah.
it turned out a few months later, maybe almost a year later, that's the company that this guy was working for. And so, why don't you explain how that worked out, and you went semi-retired and went the other direction now.
Yeah, which is hilarious too, by the way. So, look, we had a great run with Azuñia. We built a foundation of business through my off-road racing. I was probably one of the top 10 marketed teams in off-road racing.
Hmm.
I was sponsored by Ford Motor Company and General Tires, and we did all the big races. I've won every race there is to win in off-road, with the exception of the Mint 400. We missed that by a couple miles, but so we had a good groundswell. And if you don't know much about off-road racing, it's very similar to any other race organization, except for this is where, and I don't fit in this mold. The uber wealthy go out there and burn a whole bunch of money in race cars in the middle of the desert. But what's cool is everybody's low key, and there's so many great business owners in off-road racing, like the owners of Javier's Mexican restaurants in
Yes.
California and
Yes.
Nevada. The president of MGM Group, his son is BJ Baldwin, who's an off-road racer. I raced with him on the same General Tire team. I mean, we had access, and the list goes on, right? We had access
Right.
to all these great people to give us that snowball, which
Hmm.
really gave us the shot in the arm. Ultimately, we launched Azuñia Tequila in the top 5 states first, but then we rolled out into 43 pretty quickly through a great deal with on the border Mexican restaurant chains. I
Oh,
will
yeah.
I will say, and this is going to be probably in what I write for you, Mike, is some of the dummy taxes. We expanded to 43 states within 2 years, which was too fast and
Too
too
fast.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had
Growing
some we had
growing
some
too fast
failures
for your
there.
britches, right?
That's right. And
Yeah.
I had some great executives that came on board from Kettle One Vodka because they were going to lose their jobs at Kettle One due to the sale, and so we had a lot of access. At the end of the day, Great brand. Went through a few renditions of bottle designs, label designs, like everybody else. I had great investors, and we got to a point. So I'm 56 now. I've got an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old, second marriage. We got to a point where my wife says, Jim, you're not the same person that you used to be. You
Yeah.
know, your values, your integrity for the way you're living, we just had a kid, you know, I think this business is tearing you up. And, we don't have to go into all that, but it's late nights, it's traveling across the
The liquor
country.
business is very difficult, and I tell that to everybody that will listen. It's and that's just doing your own work. That's not
Well,
even counting having to deal in distribution and
well, and running a company and
yeah,
investors, and don't forget, I'm racing cars for Ford. It was a lot.
yeah.
And my wife just said, "Hey, I don't care what it's going to take, but I want you to be the person that I want you to represent the things that you stand for. If you want to step away or do something else, I'll live in a cardboard box with you. I don't care, but
Wow.
I want that
Wow.
man that I respect." And so, I started formulating what would an exit look like. And I worked with a great business coach at the time. His name is David Meltzer. He was the CEO for Leigh Steinberg. If you ever saw Jerry Maguire, the movie,
Yeah, yeah.
that's
Oh,
Leigh
that's the guy.
Steinberg, and
Okay.
Dave was his CEO. Anyways, Dave said, "Look, Jim," he goes, "you can always step away and go back to that if you want." He says, "But you got to be who you are. You got to stick by your values and what's important to you." And I formulated an exit plan. And these are things that I teach when I'm consulting people, is how to build exit plans. And I was able to step away and basically look at it and go, "Hey, you know what? I could semi-retire off this and go do something else." And basically that's what I did. And I left and I raised my kids, and I left my shares with the company and took the financial benefit. And they went on for, I think it was another year. I really kind of cut the tie and stepped away.
Yeah.
Right. And some of that
Well,
was in
you
my,
have to. You
you have
have to,
to, yeah, yeah, it
Yeah.
was too personal. And some of it was in my contract. So I step away, and a year later, I signed some docs for them to sell to Eastside Spirits up in Portland, as you had
Right.
suggested earlier. And so I don't know all the details of it. I know what most people could see publicly because they're traded. And the brand's still out there. I see it here in small town Montana. So
The
tequila
quality
still
is
tastes the
still
same.
there. They haven't changed it, and that's what I appreciated. Because very often it's the opposite. When a
Yeah,
brand sells and everybody goes, "Oh, it's going to tank. Let's everybody pick up the bottles that you love now because it's never going to taste the same." And in very few cases, it's actually gotten better.
yeah,
I think like Cabo Wabo at one point was actually better. Lots of things happened. Lots of the Corazon, for instance, went from that distillery to San Matias, and that gentleman who handles those two brands, he handles Siete Leguas too. He wasn't going to take that brand to a crappy distillery, so the quality is maintained or better, you
yeah.
know. But I can tell you that I've had Azuñia since. It's still good, man. It's still, and that's thumbs up to those guys. That's all
Well,
I can say.
I'll tell you, as long as that family makes that product for them, the Zuniga family,
Yes.
it will be the best tequila they can make. Right. And I got a really funny story about that culturally, and you'll appreciate this. Your
Yeah.
listeners
Okay.
will appreciate it. So our first order of Azuñia, I think it was $290,000 worth of tequila to bring up into the States. It was a big order.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, it took a little while to burn through that. And then we placed our second order, which I think was another 250, something like that. Well, by the time that second order came up, and we used to have a lot of samples at our office, and of course we sampled a lot after work too.
Sure. Absolutely.
Well, I try the Blanco, and I'm like, this doesn't taste the same. And so I go to my president of the company, who's also our distillery liaison. He speaks Spanish way better than I do. And I said, "Hey, can you find out why this tastes different?" And so they go back and forth. And the message back from Mexico is, Jim, we have made the absolute best tequila we could make ever. The women were out in the fields with the men helping trim the agave plants so that they were perfect. When they came in, they did not let a single thing get through that wasn't perfect, because they were so grateful of the business and the opportunity and where it was going. right? And you could imagine this. You know the culture, right?
Sure, sure.
They're doing an amazing job. So they made the tequila, and they made in their minds what was the absolute best tequila that has ever been made, right?
Hmm.
So the problem with that is it was different. They just went overboard to make it perfect, but they didn't think about making it the same.
Right.
So we had to deal with the difference. And I was like, look,
So you can't pivot and go, hey, this is a separate vintage. You
right.
can't, I mean, Ocho's made a killing from doing stuff like that. Of course, Carlos and Tomas, God bless them, those guys cutting edge. But I mean, the small batch
Yeah.
idea that they borrowed from the wine business, you could have just pivoted and go, hey, this was a different vintage.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm coming off of Kettle One, right? And I'm like, hey,
Right.
this got to taste the same. Customers have an
Right.
expectation, that soft finish. So I just loved it because the language barrier and the translation of what they meant versus what we were looking for. We were looking for consistently the same product that we bought
Right.
originally, which we thought was the best. We weren't looking for them to go overboard and make something completely different. So it's fascinating. And man, boy, did we sure appreciate them getting out there doing what they did to make the absolute
Yeah.
best. Right.
Yeah.
So it's just fun. What a great opportunity that I had to work with those families and spend all that time together. And uh they bring you into their family. You're a part of everything they do. You're invited to everything they do. And I could tell stories for weeks of all the wonderful things that I've done down there with those families.
Well,
There's,
so you decided to semi-retire. You moved to Montana. You're on a ranch. I assume that you're raising cattle or sheep
yeah,
or something, or
yeah.
horses, and you're having a great time. And next thing I hear, you're consulting. It's almost, I feel like you're Michael Corleone. Every time I want to step away, they pull me back in. So what happens? How does that happen? You kind of fall into that, or did you go seeking clients, or how does that work for you?
Uh, you know what? God opens doors. It's up to us to walk through them, right? So, 2 weeks after I stepped away from the tequila business,
Only 2 weeks?
yeah, that's one of
You
my,
couldn't even wait a month? You couldn't go on like a month-long vacation?
no, you're gonna love all these stories, Mike.
Oh
So
man.
So my friend, who's an off-road racing marketing company owner, Eric Morley, Blue Sea Marketing in Costa Mesa, California, he calls me, says, "Hey Jim, we're gonna go." He says, "I'd like to take you down to the Valle de Guadalupe, where they make all this wonderful wine just north of
Oh yeah.
Ensenada. I've been telling you about it. Let's go down and just celebrate. You stepping away and being out of Azuñia after all these years." And I'm like, sounds awesome. Let's go, Eric. And so what a lot of people don't know is even through Azuñia Tequila, we donated a lot of money to schools and orphanages and different causes in Mexico with Azuñia. But I
Hmm.
also did that with my race team.
Well, you
Every
did that. That was one of the primary things that I recall that, yeah,
Yeah,
especially with your racing. I remember it was a lot of charity work that you you
yes.
know that you did with that, and I guess it kind of dovetailed with Azuñia as well.
Yes, every race that we went down for, we went down a day early to take the race cars with another dozen teams to the orphanages so the kids could see the cars, get autographs, posters. And we always stopped at Costco, and all the money we raised, we spent it all at Costco to buy them as many supplies as we could. So Eric says, let's go down the Valle de Guadalupe. Let's visit the orphanage. Let's have some wine and enjoy a nightstand, come back. So I said, yes. So I don't know, 3 wineries in, we're living. I mean, it is so beautiful down there, Mike. And
Yeah.
we're just looking across the valley, had a, glass of red. And Eric says, hey, Jim, I'm wondering if you want to do this little project with me. I said, what's that? He goes, well, we're a marketing company that we focus on off road and we work with Honda and all these big clients. He goes, I want to show the industry you just came out of that we could be a marketing company for alcohol brands. I'm like, okay, so what are you thinking? He goes, well, can we start a company, maybe like an import company, where we bring these wines up to the US and we'll market it. We'll build all the marketing assets. You don't have to spend a dime. Let's just, if you can help. I said, okay, let me think about it. So, another glass of wine, I'm like, all right, I'm in.
Yeah.
I mean, look, it was a
That
few
was
days.
that was his whole idea, Jim. In retrospect, he,
Sucker,
he set you up.
right?
He
Yeah, he
suckered.
set me up.
Yeah.
The reality was a couple of days later, I said, yeah, Eric, I'll do it, but I want to I want to create a sustainable business that some of our profits can go to the orphanages over a long period of time, because I'm tired of going down here, 4 weekends a year and helping the orphanages. What about all the time in between? They're not getting anything.
Right.
So I was in this movie trailer called the Baja Social Club, and the theme and everything was great. Never got off the ground. It would have been an incredible movie by Bruce
I
Brown, who
know the
did some.
feeling.
Yeah, he did some surf movies. Yeah, he did. So Eric comes up with this name, Baja United. And this is at a time, I mean, I guess it's always been this way, where it just felt like the tension between the US and Mexico with the border wasn't great. So we thought, hey, we love Baja as much as we love our homeland. Let's call it Baja United and try to unite this thing, but with a purpose. And
Mhm.
that was to donate to the orphanages. So then we started this business, and an import business, and I started bringing wines up. And still to this day, I bring up Montechinique wine, which is the first luxury wine brand in Mexico. And so we
Wow.
import that.
Okay.
And so we had 5 wineries when we launched. They've dwindled down intentionally. But so we've been donating to orphanages. And about 2 years in, again, my business coach, David Meltzer, he's like, Jim, what are your plans? I'm like, well, my kids are a couple years old. I don't want to raise them in the city, which means I want to move by a ranch, whether that's in Texas or somewhere else. And I want to work from home. And he says, well, why don't you start consulting and coaching? And which was a cool opportunity and an idea. And the way that started, Mike, and we're on one right now, is this podcast. So
Hmm.
Eric tells me, he goes, Jim, start a podcast for Baja United, and it'll drive SEO traffic to our website for wine sales. I'm like, I don't know the first thing about that, right? And so
I don't know.
Dave
You
gave,
had, as I recall, when you did, we talked earlier about the last. It was going to be called Last Tequila Standing. I didn't
yeah,
pick the name. That was what the producers wanted. And I don't know, you handled yourself pretty well on camera. I think at that point you had done enough of live remotes from, TV stations and stuff that,
yeah,
early in the morning you're making a cocktail at seven, some ungodly hour, right? 7 in the morning.
there we
And he looked
go.
like he's all fresh. He's just making this beautiful cocktail. So your stage presence was gorgeous. And I have, like I said, if you want to see the rough copies, we've got those on our YouTube channel. So
Well, I appreciate that. Probably look like a baby then. So I start this
you actually look the
podcast.
same. I'm the one that looks
Oh,
a
good.
bit older. So, yeah. So what
Well,
happened?
so I start this podcast. So I didn't know what to talk about. So I talked about my life story, my time with In-N-Out Burger and the ski resort, and then Azuñia and Kettle, all this stuff. And the next day, I had 3 people call me, people that I respected that ran companies in different segments, and they all asked me for advice. And I called Dave. And I said, "These guys are asking me for advice." He goes, "Jim, that's what consulting looks like." So, unbeknownst to them, I consulted them. I called them every week for 6 months. Didn't charge them, didn't tell them what I was doing. I just was accountable to them, and I helped them with whatever I could. And
Hmm.
they all found their way. Matter of fact, one of them is a client to this day, which has been almost 6 years now. And so that's how I launched my consulting business, Mike. And
Okay.
and what was interesting is the second I started talking about being a consultant, people started coming out of the woodwork asking me to help them with their tequila brands. I
Well,
had a
you
guy,
you
yeah,
have, you've got pedigree in the business, and that's why I love talking with you. And that's why I said when we started that, I've seen the business from another angle, but you were really in the trenches. I mean,
yeah,
you've seen it from the brand segment, which is really different than watching the entire, just the entire arena, and concentrating on just one thing. So this was a no-brainer for you, man. And anybody who's listening now, if you want to start something and you're thinking of, and there's so many of them, Jim,
yeah, there
we
is.
can go, I want to get into it a little bit more about that, but go ahead and finish your story because, oh
Well,
my God,
the,
there's so much I
what
want to
was
scream at,
me too. Maybe we'll have to do this again. The first guy that called me was out of Wyoming, and I'll leave names out just so that we're respectful for them. But he called me out of Wyoming, and he was a National Geographic professional photographer. And he says, Jim,
Oh,
I
wow.
want to start this tequila company. I'm very passionate about sustainability and all these things. I've traveled the world. So he did all the extreme sport photography for National Geographic because I'm tired of potentially going and dying, like on
Oh,
Everest and
yeah.
all these mountains and the big wave surfing and these cliffs and all that stuff. He said, but this is what I want to do.
There's no
So
hazard pay.
he's like, yeah, no hazard, right? He says, "Can you help me?" And I, of course, I said yes. But I hadn't really built out a structure yet. I had already had another paying client, but I had not thought about the structure for the tequila business. And I was so flattered. I said, "Look," and I look back on it, I did it for nothing basically. But I gave it everything I had. The brand is still around. It's extremely successful. It's one of the top brands on Drizzly and some of these other online websites.
Drizzly's gone, man.
Yeah,
It
Gonzo, right?
disappeared. It launched in a year, sold for a few million, and boom, it's gone.
Yeah. I mean, so I watched this brand take off. I'm like, wow, I guess I'm pretty good at this. And the client was amazing, and he stood by his passion, and that's why his success, to this day is still there. So then the word started getting out that I can consult and bring, tequilas up or help with that. I've done 9 brands now.
Can you name
All
any of them? I know that some of them are your clients,
No,
but
I can name them all. I just Wild Common. That was Wild Common story.
okay, Wild Common.
Wild Common in Cantadora out of Florida. They came
Oh
and went.
my God, don't even start with me in Encantadora.
Yeah, they came
Tell me
and
that wasn't your idea.
it was not my idea. That they needed.
They talk of, we talked earlier about growing too big for your britches.
Yeah.
They are I'm sorry, but for me, and the reason I'm so passionate about that brand is because we sampled all of them.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
the ideas that they came up with were cutting edge.
Yeah.
Everything was perfect, Jim. The bottles, the graphics, the marketing I'm not too sure about, but everything. They had a mezcal with salts and no, they had a mezcal with matcha. It's delicious. I'm still hoarding a bottle of their coffee, the
Yeah.
coffee liqueur. They
I
could
have
have
it.
made a killing right now after Patron stopped making that awful, god awful coffee thing, and now everybody's got a coffee line. They came up with one of the best I've ever tasted. What happened with those guys? Can you even go into detail? Because I
Let
love
me
them. I
let me
love them.
Mike, let me say this instead. Okay.
Okay,
There's 2 big mistakes people make in this business. Okay.
well, let's hear it. I want to hear your side of the
Yeah. And
story. Go ahead.
this is just 2 mistakes people make in this business. Okay. Not pointing a finger. Number one, just because you have a distributor doesn't mean they're going to sell everything you have for you and you get to sit back at home and collect your checks.
No,
Okay.
no.
Which leads to number 2. You have, you have to, you must work the streets and sell your brand.
Thank you.
If
Thank
you
you.
don't, if you
No, you know
don't,
what? Can we stay? Can we? Let's go to the highest butte in Montana, all right, and scream that on over the
dude,
microphones
it's the
because
first thing I tell anybody. It's the first thing. So you could have the best idea, the best tasting matcha or coffee liqueur tequila, but if you're going to expect the distributor to do your job for you, and by the way, if you're fortunate enough these days, to have a distributor say yes to you, you better work your ass off from 6 a.m. till midnight every day, selling your product, building your brand so that distributor does not regret saying yes to you because they've said no to 10,000 other brands in the last 30 days.
Mhm.
So if you're fortunate enough, do not squander that opportunity and you get out there and you sell that brand because that's your job. Their job, literally, this is what I tell people, Mike. What is the description of what they do? They're a distributor. It's their job to take your product from point A to point B. And you know what? Thank goodness that they collect the receivable because man, it's hard to collect receivables if you're self-distributing. I know
Yeah.
I have a distribution license. They collect for you. And by the way, they also buy up front. Net terms are typically 30 days and they pay on day 30. So you can count on that check. If you're fortunate enough to have a distributor, you better go out there and work your tail off. Okay. So I'm going to leave that story there, Mike.
Okay.
Some of the
I
other
think you know
brands,
what? Your message is loud and clear, pal. Let me tell you.
well, that's worth 100 grand right there.
Yeah, it
Um,
is. Because Lord knows they've lost a lot. They've
yeah.
lost. Oh, folks, if you haven't seen our review of Encantadora, we loved the entire line. One of our guys on we have now since you and I spoke last, it used to be just myself and Alex doing all the reviews, but now I got a team of 12 tasters throughout the US, including Alex. He's kind of back out of semi-retirement. And I have one guy in the UK. And one of our tasters is a founding member of ADI, American
Mhm.
Distilling Institute, Eric Zandona, who's written books, and the guy's got a wide palette. We loved every single expression that they came up with. Everything worked. Everything worked. It
Mike,
was
I'm
it
going to
was
put you
a
in touch with
it
the
was there
owner.
was no way this could have failed, and then we have a
Yeah.
magazine as well, and we tried to get them on the cover. Crickets. We
Yeah.
heard nothing from them, and that's when and here's the thing, between you, me, and the fence post, and anybody else who's listening, um, we see this a lot.
All the
I'm
time.
sure Jim has seen it more times than not. I have seen it just in my experience. I've seen brands that could not fail, and something happens. With the importer, that he has an argument with the family, and then they one brand in particular. I'm not going to mention any names like you, but um, they bet the farm, they mortgaged their house, they bought a bus, they outfitted it, they were going to storm the country with this tequila, and at the last minute, they were going to invest in a distillery. It's a very, very small distillery, and at the last minute, the main partner in that distillery, the main Mexican partner, he ran those two guys off with a gun. I mean,
Oh my gosh.
yeah, he ran them off at gunpoint. They lost everything. These guys
Wow.
were really a couple of the nicest guys, Jim. I mean,
Well, Mike,
and I at that time I couldn't help them. I didn't have the experience to even. And do you often find do you often find that when somebody contacts you, is it before the fact or once they're already knee deep in it, up to their necks, and they're going, Mike or Jim, I'm making a mistake and I know it. I can feel it in my heart. Help me out. What do I do now?
well, I helped Tavi Tequila, which is barely in the market, and I
They've
helped
been around
Tavi.
for a while, though.
They have, and but Tavi burned. And he'll tell you, he burned so much money, millions,
I
before he
believe
came
it.
to me. I said, "This is insane. I could do more than what you've done with $100,000, and you spent millions." So I helped him for a year. He's got some family things that has got him out of the business for right now, but he'll be back. And if he comes back, I'm willing to help him because I've received so much great reception on his model. He's got a business model, and we could talk about that a later day. But there's one of those guys that spent a lot of money and then just got screwed and screwed and screwed. Is by the way, it's one of the reasons why I've done well in consulting in this business because I know enough distilleries and enough good people that if somebody comes to me before the fact, I'll say, look, here's the people that you can work with. Here's my people in Mexico that will
Right.
drive you, the attorneys, all those things. And that's how I'm able to save people hundreds of thousands of dollars. One of your probably more favorite brands as of late is Baja with Rico
Yes.
and his team.
Yeah,
You know,
Rico
he,
and Jay and
yep,
and Charlie in Mexico, those guys, I they were nice enough to bring me out and to check out their distillery, and that's where I met the family at El Viejito,
yep,
and I wrote all about it, in our magazine about Baja and the legend of El Viejito, and now I understand why that family, the El Viejito family and distillery, are so beloved by
yeah,
the small handful of brands that come out of there. They're not a big
yeah.
maquiladora, but they don't want to be. They don't,
And so that was one of the distilleries that I worked with, right? And
right?
so and by the way, I hadn't done a lot of stuff with them. There was a few other brands that I took through there, but because I trusted one and the way that they run business. So Rico called me before they kicked off. He goes, "Hey, we want to do this. Will you help us?" And I said yes. And so I get them all the way down the road. We're finally intentionally is this allowing him to part ways from my support because they're on the road, man.
Yeah,
He can call me. He knows it whenever he wants. But
right.
yeah, that was another brand. I helped with Javier's Mexican restaurant do an off-premise brand that they legally can do out of California. I don't think it's launched yet. That was
I
a year
think they're
project.
still, yeah, they're
They're still
still
figuring it out.
the
Yeah.
the gentleman that we know, the ESQ that we know in common is still flying,
Yeah.
back and forth and back and forth.
Yeah. So
So
that
it's
was
still.
that was no fun for me. I like to get stuff done. Fierme Mezcal is a great brand. I'm
Legitimate. I
partners.
love their marketing, and their juice is outstanding.
Yep.
Been trying to get the rest of them for our sipping off the cuff reviews, but As a matter of fact, just as a side note, our founder of Tequila Aficionado is now the beverage director of El Cholo in Pasadena,
Oh,
California.
nice.
We
Okay.
have a residency there now, so we do tastings once or twice a month, and we have been helping out Blair Salisbury, one of the
Yeah, I
family
know Blair.
members. Yeah, so you know Blair. Well, Firme is one of the mezcals where Alex is actually building. There's going to be a whole mezcaleria section of the restaurant that will be just mezcal, sotol, raicilla, all the Mexican spirits and rums and stuff like that. So that's coming.
You have to try their expressions. I'll get Alberto
Yeah,
over to you to
please
try
do
those other
because
expressions. They're
I know Alex loved them as well. I mean, we've got some. It's a whole long story about what we're doing, and I can send you the PDF article that came out one of the local magazines in Pasadena.
fun.
I'll send you the PDF. But
So
so
so but
yeah, so that's
I've
another brand I love. I love their marketing, their package. It comes in a paper bag. I love
dude,
it.
it's so great. And they have, famous artists and stuff like that. A lot of
Yeah,
collaborations. All in all, I've done, I think it's been 12 brands. Few I can't talk about my involvement, but they're successful. They've got celebrities behind them. And the phone rings once in a while. And if they have a business plan that I can get behind, you talk about the Army, they've got incredible marketing, the Cholo market
right.
and history and LA and all these things. They had a plan. I've got a new mezcal that I'm working with, and they'll be coming to market. I'm very passionate about their plan as well. But Mike, it's been fun, and to be able to save people, the headaches, the heartache, the loss of money, and just be smart about their business and teach them the things that I've learned has been very rewarding for me. And it's so cool. When I launched Azuñia, it was so cool because I'm out of California. When somebody called me from Florida, they're like, I'm drinking Azuñia at this bar in South Beach. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. My bottle's all the way in Florida. Well, now I help all these brands. I go to bars or liquor stores and I see all the brands that I helped, and it feels so good. And I think you feel the same way. It's not just because it's the brand in the United States, but you and I both know what that represents in Mexico. The
Well, yeah.
families, the distilleries, the economy, the stimulation of that
The
economy.
jobs that are created, because to my knowledge, uh, I would never recommend a mass produced distillery with a bigger let's say capabilities. You
Yeah.
know, uh, I mean, just and I can tell that just from the fact of, like I say, I still remember Regional, I still remember Azuñia from the old days. And when I don't know about you, but I do a lot of editing too because we write our own material for the magazine, and a lot of times I get people that write columns for us, and we do the editing because they're basically our three editors and our editor in chief, who is also our managing partner and one of my tasters. Um, so there's three of us, and very often, you when you edit somebody's thoughts and an essay or an article, you want to keep their voice, but you want to see if you can rearrange it so it makes a little bit more sense. Because some people don't sit and write. It's very difficult for them. I mean, I'm sure writing your book was, I don't know, it depends. I love writing, but not everybody loves to write, and so I
I used Ghostwriter.
that's what I thought.
I'm not, I mean,
Okay.
I'm not laughing at myself, but yeah, just being
See,
transparent.
and I gotten to the point now where there's so much material. Our last book that we were hoping to bring back is our Consumer Catador course. That was 2 years of, sitting down, writing, and now dictating. There's
Yeah.
dictation where you can edit, and so it allows me to reverse engineer where this person's thought processes are. And I think it's the same with tequila. When you get to the end product, the juice, they'll say the blanco, because for us it's always the blanco, and then everything else kind of, if you like the blanco, you're going to love the rest of the line, or it's a good indicator anyway.
Hmm.
Um, and then you go, wow, this is terrific. Who's the guy that makes this? And you go backwards in the process, and you realize who the great, who the master distillers are, who the families are, where this comes from, and then you understand, and now you go, oh, now I know where this is coming from. It's what happened with me with the El Viejito family with Juan Nunez, and everybody kept telling me what a great distillery. I think
Yeah.
you told me too, and it's like, why does everybody defend this place? Because I'd never been. And
Uh-huh.
when I finally got there, it's like, and they let's let it wander around, and there's something there, something intrinsic. There's a vibe, there's a feeling, and you get it in, it's internal. You can't place it. It's a missing ingredient. It's,
Yeah.
but I swear, and I'm going to start harping on that a little bit more. I think it's the missing ingredient to mass produce tequilas is that there's no soul. There's no there's no intent of the maker. And when there isn't that, yeah, it's mainstream, it's gonna sell, but then you got to come up with smoke and mirrors and dress it up with something else and try to make it taste like if you had started from the beginning with the right stuff, you wouldn't be spending your money over on this side. So,
Yeah, you're so right. I'll tell you, I have nothing negative to say about the Azuñia departure and all that stuff,
oh no.
except for one thing. When I was packing up my office, I felt like I was literally packing up the soul of the brand. I made that
You
from
you
its
were the
inception,
you
right?
and yeah, and that's why I was surprised that you jumped in on something else 2 weeks after you
Yeah.
left. Because
So
that's a relationship. That's like a breakup. It's like,
it was, but
yeah,
again, David Meltzer just inspired me. Like, hey, you can always go back to this, and now I get to help a whole bunch of people, right? So,
yeah, oh yeah.
with all the brands I've helped, but I remember packing, going, I hope that they can find the soul of this brand. You know, before we wrap, I got two more quick things for you.
Okay.
And I'm not in a rush, but because I'm thinking about the soul of the brand, right? So when I first started with the Azuñia and the Zuniga family, the manager of the property, Sebastian, he had a daughter, and I think she was 7 or 8. And I just fell in love with her. I didn't have kids at the time, and she just was one of those little kids, always around. And so through her broken English and my broken Spanish, we made a deal. We shook hands on it that when she turned 15 for a quinceañera, I would buy her the most beautiful dress in all of Mexico.
Oh my God. Now you make me cry. Gosh.
Yeah. Well, so over the years, that was our running joke, and literally, I can't order a beer from her, so I don't speak enough Spanish to communicate well with her, and she just spoke no English. But over the years, she started taking English class and got better and better and better. Well, by her 14th year, she learned English, and it was kind of funny because I thought, well, how much could the dress be? A couple $100, right?
Yeah.
$900 later.
Uh-huh.
But
Well,
let me tell you something, Mike. She was the most beautiful princess. I flew down there with our investors in private jets. The whole bit, right? And
yeah,
this
yeah.
dress was absolutely stunning. And when we came out of the church after the ceremony, she was on the back seat of a convertible BMW, and that dress covered the whole entire trunk of the
Oh
car.
my
I
God.
was like a proud dad, and
Well,
I
you were
know
the
enough.
padrino. You were the godfather at least, right? I
Well,
mean,
let me tell you, I got the second dance at the party.
wow.
Dad
Wow.
first, then I went
That's a big
second. So
deal, man. That's
I
a big
know I
deal.
didn't know it at the time, but they're like, "Wow, you got the second dance." Huh. Anyways, it was such a great moment, and that just goes back to when I say that this tequila business is more than just what you see here in the U.S. and the brand name and the bar behind the
Or the
bottle behind the
celebrity, the
bar.
celebrity behind it,
But
whatever.
it's the families in Mexico. And it does why it irks me. You say celebrity. It irks me why when celebrities pop up a brand and they make all the fake BS about what they're doing in Mexico.
Yeah,
They could care less, right?
right.
So that was one story I wanted to tell before we closed out. And I just thought of a brand that really was so awesome that I had the pleasure of working with for a year, and that was Cascanas.
Yeah,
Um,
I remember that's where we touched base again after, a few years of not actually communicating. Uh, you reached out to me, and we were able to get them on a cover of our first cover of
yeah.
Tequila Aficionado magazine.
Well, and I'll tell you what it is about them. It's not necessarily the people behind the brand. They had a lot of different people involved at different
Yeah, they did.
levels.
They did.
For me, what it was, Mike, is that tequila was awesome.
Yeah.
It was absolutely awesome. And I went and visited the distillery, and it was probably one of the smallest distilleries I've ever been to. On some back roads. I think it was still in a Matitan, might have been tequila address. I'm not 100% sure, but that tequila was awesome. And I just finished I think one of my last bottles I had that I drug up to Montana
The
with me.
original. Oh my God.
And I was like, man, I miss this tequila. It was so good. So I don't know. I mean, I said I worked with over 13 brands and a few I can't mention, but that was one of them. I really, really enjoyed the product. Um, you brought up one other thing briefly, and that was, I reached out to you with Cascadas. I've actually reached out to you with every single brand I've worked with because of who you are, what you represent in this business,
My.
and I'm so grateful for the role that you've played. As you've seen, and I've seen a lot of people come and go out of tequila, whether they're the face of a company or the face of the industry, or if they've put their stake in the sand, like I'm going to be the tequila guy for Canada or whatever. Like,
Mhm.
you see these people, but they come and go, and you're one of those guys that are still here in the middle of it, making a difference, helping brands, doing everything you can. So I appreciate you. I want to make sure you know that before we get
Wow.
off air.
Thank you,
I
Jim.
appreciate you and
Wow.
what you do. And I've always appreciated having your number and being able to call you and go, hey, I got a brand. I'm just going to introduce you. Let's see what they're willing to do. Maybe you guys can figure it out. And you guys always figure something out for them. And it just goes along the same lines of consulting, is you're helping these people get a leg up in this business. It's very, very hard, very
It's
hard.
difficult when, I explain to people because a lot of Americans don't even know how their distribution system works. They don't
Yeah.
know how that bottle of tequila gets into the United States, and then the system of distribution has been abused. It's swallowed itself. It has become this behemoth, and it's really not a, when distribution was developed right after Prohibition, it was designed to help the local whiskey makers distribute to other states in the United States. It was
Yeah.
never designed for the other brands to be brought into the United States. They never even thought that far. And now, there are so many secondary, tertiary, parallel businesses built around that three tier. And in Texas, a mysterious fourth tier that I've
Yeah.
only had
Right.
one person. Texas, again, a whole other country. But, you know, it really needs to be torn down. It has to, something has to be amended. But again, that's going to take an act of Congress. And,
Mm-hmm.
right
Yep.
now,
All the
it's hard.
above.
It's hard to even conceive of something like that at this point. But um, eh, I I wanted to ask you, what do you tell brands? I mean, okay, let me back up a little bit. First of all, what do you want brands to know about you and your services? Anybody that's listening, somebody who's going to go, hey, that guy, he could probably help me. He's got a lot of experience. You know, what do you want people to know about Baja United, your business, your personal consultation?
Yep.
What is it that that you need to let them know about?
Sure. And I appreciate that opportunity, Mike. So I can help them from start to finish, from concept to finish. And most often, I won't work with somebody unless they have a business plan or a willingness to work with me to create one. And I've created a bunch of them, including Encantadora. I helped them build theirs out, which is beautiful. That business
Yes.
plan will give you a roadmap for the rest of your career. It'll also help you raise capital if you need it. I raised over $12 million at the end of the day for Azuñia. So I can help them from nuts to bolts. Here's what I really want them to know, though. Okay.
Hmm.
I don't want ownership in your company. I want you to keep your business. I want you to hang on to as many shares as possible so that you have control over that destiny based on what you built in that business plan.
Hmm.
Okay. And the first question I ask most,
Why is that so important?
because I've seen what happens when good brands give up too much ownership to investors and partners that can tear it apart. And I would rather see somebody bootstrap it and be patient in the consistent pursuit of their dreams and what they want, right?
Hmm.
So I'm going to help them fulfill their dream and their brand promise every way that I can. And they need to know that it's going to be hard, but it's worth it, and also that they need to be patient. But I can help them from start to finish. I'm reasonable, but I'm not cheap. But I will save you hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I've got clients that will tell you I've done that already, and
Hmm.
I'll get you to market. If it's directly from the start, probably within a year, I can get you to market if everything
Wow,
goes right.
that's great.
And you've got to have some funding. You know, I Mike, the first thing I ask anybody that comes to me, I said, are you doing this because you want to make money, or is this an ego stroke? I said, if
Yeah,
I say if it's an ego stroke,
absolutely.
ego stroke's easy. I can help you. Like, no problem. We'll get this done. I'll give you all the ego stroke you want. And it really, people have to be honest, because sometimes that's really what they want. They want to have a brand. They want to sit on the back bar. They want to go to their local watering hole and drink their booze and brag to their friends. That's cool. There's a ton of brands that do that. If you want to make money, then we're going to build out a plan that's going to take some time, and you better be patient, and you better be willing to fund this thing
Hmm.
and go for the long haul. But I'll build a plan for either one, and I'm okay with either one. I get it. Totally. I'm gonna start a whiskey company. I'm not gonna say for the ego of it, but because I want to. I know I'm
Right,
not gonna make any money. I just want to, right?
right.
So but yes, I can help Mexico and the US. I've got team on both parts. I also have an import license and a distribution license in California. So I can get you going all the way. And then I'm going to give you the tools to do it on your own. I'm not forever. I don't
Right,
want to be a drain on your payroll. I want to
right.
get you to a point so that you can say, you know what, Jim, I'm good. And then you can dip back in here and there. But I want your money to be preserved for your goals and what you want to happen with your company. Okay. So
And I think
that's
that
a
I
nutshell.
that's beautiful because and I totally agree with you. I think I was this past weekend I was involved in a special invitation only uh, mezcal tasting for a brand that I'm working with. You know, and
Hmm.
there are a couple of ladies who are going to roll out a special mezcal. You know, I again, like you, I brought them together with the person who guided them into Oaxaca. The one of the partners of this brand has had previous experience with another brand. Similar to you, she owns a little bit of that brand still, but she wanted to go off and do her own thing, and their background is from the music business, and so they I taught them first of all, you know, from the ground up about mezcal, and you know,
Hmm.
and so they asked me to do a special tasting for fundraising for potential investors, um and one of the things afterwards is, you know, there are some people who are really wanting to get to get involved, and others were on the fence, and I could see why. I mean, I saw both ends, and I wasn't there to close anybody. I wasn't there as in the sales capacity, you know, but I knew that talking about the brand and the qualities of the brand would help them make an informed decision, whatever that would be.
Yeah.
And one gentleman said to me, "Okay, I love what's going on. That this person, this distiller, is making it in an ancestral way, you know, and the fascinating backstory on the whole thing. But on the other hand, I'm looking at my ROI, and they're looking, you know, their return on investment. You know, how fast can that happen?" And I'm thinking to myself, it didn't occur to me until afterwards because I wasn't in that mindset, and I should have been thinking a little bit further ahead because you're right. You're to your point, when you get into the tequila business or the agave spirits business, if you want to make a ton of money fast, Jim can help you. But if you're in it for the long haul, this is a long game. When you look to see how long it takes for this plant to grow and how long the master distiller takes in the fermentation in the jimadores, and it's not being industrially made where they speed everything up and they, you know, you got to look at that and go, okay, if you're going to diversify your portfolio of investments, you have quick sale, you know, you can buy Diageo, you can buy Brown Forman, you can buy all those shares and make some money on that. But maybe you want to diversify and have some long term, like our interview here is a long form that we can
Yeah.
cut up in little pieces, right? And so, you know, with me and agave, especially if it's done correctly, you have to understand this is going to be a long game. It's not something, and if you do it right, you know, eh, am I correct? Am I in the ballpark here?
100%. And you know, the problem is, Mike, that people look at these deals like, George Clooney, right? They're
Right.
like, oh,
Yeah.
that brand wasn't around very long. He sold what, a couple 100 million, whatever the number was. I
A,
don't remember what it
a
was, but
billion something, whatever.
yeah. But what they don't realize is that Clooney was spending 20 million a year plus in marketing every year. Who's got that check to write?
Yeah.
If you want to write that kind of check, I'll get you the distribution he had, because he had people working the streets, writing checks,
Yep.
getting it done, and the distribution is what sold the brand. So I help walk people through all these strategies, distribution, brand building, et cetera, and we'll work around the budget. So anyways, I love it. That's a good question.
What last thing for you? What do you say to a potential client or somebody who is a client and they don't have your stage presence. They don't have, they're not comfortable in front of a camera. And so they hesitate being the face of their brand. And yet they are, in your heart, if this guy doesn't stand it. And I tell this to clients of mine, you better be prepared to stand in front of your brand. Because to your point earlier, when you said you got to work that brand every single day, 12 hours a day, you got to be in front of it. You can't be behind it, have somebody else do it for you. What do you say to these people who are just really hesitant to, brands, for instance, and not to beat this one because a lot of it isn't your fault. But I never saw a brand representative for Encantadora. Where's the mermaid? Where's the, where's the where's the person who's going to say, this is mine. We brought this out. We want you to enjoy it. Where's that spokesperson? How do some people, and I know a lady who's doing that for her own brand without any previous experience, but she was a lawyer, and she's doing gangbusters and she's doing it on her own, because she took the initiative and she's still not comfortable in front of a camera. But, the more she does this,
Yeah.
you know,
Here-
so what do you say to those people?
Well, first of all, that mermaid was on her private estate in St. John waiting for the checks to arrive because they had a distributor. But so I'm in the coaching business. Okay. I'm a consultant and I coach up to 5 clients a month on a personal level,
Okay.
mainly executives, transitionary stuff. 3 of which I'm helping work on stage presence because they want to go off from their executive careers and be public speakers. I went on a
Oh,
speaking,
cool.
yeah, I did a speaking tour last year. Um, had a great time doing it, and it's something I've done forever, right? So another thing that you get with me, and this isn't, you asked the question, so I'm going to upsell a little bit,
Let's
is that
go.
I've been in so many industry, I've done so many things that I'm able to bring those skill sets to the table. And by the way, if I don't have that skill set, I've got a successful podcast called "The Answer Is Yes," and I've got over 500 shows on there, and I've interviewed executives, entrepreneurs, pro athletes, across the board for the last 6 years. I'll just reach out to one of them and say, hey, I don't have the answer to this. Do you know? Because I've got personal relationships with most of them, or I've
Mhm.
maintained some kind of contact, right? So I'm able to use, my 56 years of living and all that experience to bring to the table for people. So when I look at a brand, to your question, and they're not willing to represent it, first thing I say, you know what? At Kettle One, we had a 78-year-old salesperson named with Ernie Broadbeck out of New York City, had the accent and everything, lived in Florida. He would get up in front of us, take off his shoes, his Ferragamos,
Yeah.
lift them up, hold them in the air, and show us the bottom of them because they're normally worn out. I think these shoes are just for this talk. But
Yeah.
he says, if you're not willing to wear out the soles of your Ferragamos, then you're not doing the job, right? And so
Love it.
the point was
I
taken, right?
love it.
He looked like this little mobster, right?
Yeah.
If you're not willing to get out and get your hands dirty and do the job and be in front of the camera, whatever it takes, you're not going to succeed. And Mike, it's funny. There's a few brands that I've been working with, and you know them all. Their investors like, oh, you got to put this guy in sales. They're going to be great. They're going to sell all these, all this product, and so then they don't, and they leave. And then the investors give you somebody else. They don't, then they leave. And who's standing there? The guy that owns the company or started the
Yeah.
brand,
Yeah.
outselling all of them and going, I don't know why nobody works. Well, nobody's going to sell the brand like you. Nobody's going to have
Exactly.
the passion like you. Nobody's
Thank
going to tell
you.
your story in front of the camera on the podcast like this, like you. So, pull your big pants on and do the
Exactly.
job.
Yeah.
And have some fun with it. This is a
Well,
fun business.
again, that's what I remember about you when you and I first met. This is a guy who's importing, Azuñia. He flies out to San Bernardino in some godforsaken little studio that was, used for wrestling, and and um, and he's making his own cocktails, and he's beautiful cocktails, and he's just having a good time doing it, and it's the liquor business. Well, it's a tequila business for us. It's the agave
Yes.
spirits business. If you don't have any fun, you're just gonna
Get
work.
out.
Yeah, you're in and out. You're gonna run yourself into the ground. Remember, it's a long game. But if you want a short game, talk to this guy because he's your guy right there.
Well, I can show you both. I would rather do the long game for people. Mike, the short game is, well, look, I'm going to save you money. That's the short part of it, right?
Right,
I'm going to save you
right.
money. I'm going to help you do it right. I will get the job done exponentially faster because of relationships I've had all these years. I'd much rather do a passion project that is slow, methodical, with patience, and for all the right reasons. If you want an ego stroke, I'll help you get that too, and we might have some fun there. By the way, if you need an example of fun, look at those Baja Riba guys, man. They are having fun
Those
all the time,
guys,
man. They're
oh my
infectious.
God. Rico and Jay. Well, just try spending 3 days with those guys,
Yeah,
man.
yeah,
I'm
I
telling
have.
you. Well, and then when we went to the distillery to El Viejito and went to the offices, and we sat there for an hour drinking out of their infinity barrel, right? They
Yeah,
just filled up those bottles of whatever, bottle that they had. And it was the infinity barrel. This is famous infinity barrel. They just keep filling it. And that's where they pour the samples from. And we had this beautiful conversation. Everything off the record, of course. I couldn't, but I knew a lot about the history of the distillery, who was coming in and out of there. Didn't they make a tequila for? They were a Patron distillery for a while. They
yep,
subcontracted. I was bringing up stuff that even Juan forgot. They was, hey,
that's
that's
funny.
right. And it was those memories are going to be with me forever and with them, because that's how you forge relationships. And then to be able to, and I knew I had to write a story around this. And so to see the different uh personalities that were all that they were, I mean, we're all different, and how it all came together and gelled to watch them, package, they take the bottles, their first shipment off the line, put it in their boxes. I got a picture of Jay, holding on to the
So cool.
first pallet. That was, I've never been, involved in watching somebody's dream come to
How
fruition.
fun. How fun, right? That's why I
Yeah,
do this. That's why I
yeah.
do this.
Well,
You know,
that's awesome, Jim. No wonder you look much more fulfilled at this point. I mean,
Mike, I've
the
been
pressure
so
of having to be on all the time too, that's got to be rough.
Look,
So,
brother, I've been so blessed my whole life with my careers, my brands, and my opportunities. It's time that I give those blessings back, And the only reason why I charge what I do is because people have to respect the value of the opportunity. Because if they don't show up for phone calls, they don't treat it important, So there's a method behind the madness. I'm not going to break anybody's bank, but there's a reason why it's a value for value exchange. Dude, what I love about the agave business, and maybe we could wrap up here,
sure.
is
Yeah, no, you have to go. I'm sorry. I could talk
no,
forever.
hey, I'm having fun, dude. Off road to NASCAR. NASCAR is our F1, hoity
Oh yeah.
toity, it's everything's very, very serious, which is great. I appreciate that about the sport. But when you go to off road, people are helping each other. They're sharing secrets. They're sharing stories, because at the end of the day, when you're in the middle of the desert, broken down, you're hoping that your competitor will stop and at least offer you a glass of water because you're in the middle of the desert, right? And who
Yep.
knows how long you're going to be there.
Yeah.
The agave industry is just like that. We all share each other's contacts and friends. I mean, I'm talking about these, our world of, I'm not talking about the Diageo world, right? I'm
No,
talking about
no,
our
no.
world of down home, down to earth people sharing. You started talking about Viejito in your stories. I was introduced to one by Gary Eisenberg from Karma.
Yes,
From
Gary
Karma.
Eisenberger was one of the Gary was the one that kept saying, "This is a wonderful distillery. I
Yeah,
love
yeah.
these people," and they kept, and it was the same. I kept
And
meeting
so
other
the
brand owners that were making their tequilas there, and they were all saying the same story.
and that's the point, and this goes to the fun of the business, and it's a great ending note, is that this is a great business filled with wonderful people that are willing to share, sit around a table and drink some tequila out of the infinity barrel,
Yeah,
and know that you were introduced to this opportunity by somebody else in the business willing to help and grow together. And there's just so many, and that's why it burns me up so badly when somebody gets taken advantage of
yeah,
from the wrong people, the wrong
yes,
money, the wrong
I
whatever.
agree.
And I want to avoid that. So if I can help you, I'd love to help you. If there you
Because
go.
you know what, the alternative is very, very painful.
And expensive.
Oh yeah. Again, we could have spent an hour and a half just talking about all the
Yeah.
failures, all the near misses, that, and
Yeah.
I don't want to, and it's hard. It's difficult because when you have a vested interest in your client, you again, you want to see them succeed. You want to do right by them as well. And then something happens. I don't know, act of God, the pandemic, that pandemic just didn't help things at all. And but and by the same token, a lot of these brands succeeded. A lot of people,
I
that's
I had
one
the
of the
best
reasons
I had the
one of
best
the
business years of my life during the pandemic. You know
you know
why? Because
we did
I've been
too.
around long enough. I know
Yeah.
that I know how to survive, and that's the thing. That's what you get when you go and get a professional help, right?
Yeah.
Experience. So,
Yeah. Well,
um,
Jim, this has been awesome. I know you have to go, and I appreciate, first of all, thank you for all the kind words earlier. I
yeah,
so
I
much
mean it.
appreciate that. No, I know you do, because when I'm glad we finally had this opportunity, because it this was a long time coming.
Yeah,
I think now that people who are look at the growth of the tequila industry, the agave spirits industry. Now it's branching out into mezcals and sotols now, and anything else that looks like it's the yellow brick road, and more and more of these stories have to come out.
yeah,
Uh,
I agree.
and the proper way of guiding somebody through this, so that they not only have a successful brand, they make a little money, they have a lot of fun, and then an exit plan somewhere down the road,
Yeah,
And
yep.
so again, Jim Riley, first of all, folks, let me recap. You've been listening and watching, hopefully, our another edition of Open Bar, with my special guest Jim Riley of Baja United, who's just, I can't tell you how informative and what a gem this guy is in the business. If you're looking to do something of quality in the agave spirits business, and it doesn't matter what agave spirits. I mean, tequila is his thing, but we've got mezcals, and I'm sure some of the
Vodka,
other
rum,
brands are coming.
whiskey,
Rums,
wine.
whiskey, wine, of course. Talk to this guy, reach out to him. Where can they find you? Where can
Yeah,
they?
go to my websites. Life Driven. Live Life Driven. If you want to build a plan around what you're dreaming about, Live Life Driven is my website. You can get my book there, The Freedom to Say Yes. You can hear my podcast. The answer is yes on all major channels. Or you can reach out to Mike. He knows how to get a hold of me now. I'd
Yeah,
love to
I got his
I'd love to
phone
hear from
number.
you.
If I don't know, the other thing too is, I think you should, if you folks do a lot of business on LinkedIn, I think I get contacted several times on LinkedIn. It's becoming more and more of a thing now. You can see Jim's LinkedIn. He's very accessible. Shoot him a DM, and he'll take it from there.
Mike,
So
I want to say I got a last line I want to say,
go
and I
for
meant
it.
to say this earlier. This came from an employee. I haven't talked to her for, I don't know, 12 years. It's been a long time, maybe not
Wow.
12. Worked for me at Azuñia. Her name
Right.
is Kaylee Asher. She's a
That name is
very,
familiar. I
yeah,
do.
well, her and her husband are very reputable mixologists out of Arizona.
That's why.
And I
Okay.
hadn't heard from her at all. And she sent me this text out of the blue the other night. It says, "When I first started with Azuñia, you told me this is the line, and you can write this down or remember it.
Okay.
Remember, you aren't selling tequila; you're solving problems. Our customers have problems, and you're there to help resolve them. If you listen, they'll tell you what they need." And that that's an age-old
Wow.
story about what when you're creating a brand. Listen to what people want; they'll tell you what they need. So if you're going to create a tequila, listen, right? And I'm so appreciative for Kaylee sending that. And
That's
I think
beautiful. That
it
kid, that's got to be a quote in your next book.
well, she said she's carried that
The,
with her
the
ever since
power
I
of
said it.
listening.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, Mike, I'm really blessed to be here, and thank you for having me as well.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you for being on with us. And we got to do this again. Maybe we'll do it in person or something. When do you ever come out to California, or do you just not bother anymore?
I'll be in Palm Springs next week for a few days. It's the first
Ah,
time
you dog. Palm Springs.
I don't leave Montana too often. The only reason I'm going there is because it's been minus 35 here through the holiday. I'm ready. My kids are ready for
Yeah.
some warm air.
Wow, I don't blame you.
Yeah.
Well, we've had a few days of rain, so you might want to wait until it dries out a little bit before you go down there.
There you
But
go.
love Palm Springs. I grew up there in the summer times. In the summer times, folks, I went down there.
Ooh.
But anyway, Jim, thank you so much, Jim Riley. You've been watching, listening to Open Bar on Tequila Aficionado Media, all of our channels and networks. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bells, give us a like, leave us a comment if you've done business with Jim or you'd like to. We'll look at the comments on this particular episode. And folks, whatever you do, sip wisely, okay?